smoldering. And I've got to say, even standing out here through our masks, we can smell the scent of smoke in the air. It's hanging heavily in the air. So that's really just a tangible reminder, Chuck, of all of the unrest that filled these streets here in Southwest Atlanta overnight and well into the morning. Now, a number of remarkable things about this, Chuck. First of all, is the fact that there are 6 different angles, at least, of video that show exactly what happened, what unfolded in this Wendy's parking lot on Friday night. One of them eyewitness video, surveillance video that was released by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and then 4 different angles of body camera and dash camera video from police officers. So when you look at that surveillance video, Chuck, you see those final moments of Rayshard Brooks' life before he was shot by the officer there in that parking lot. Now, we do know, again, that this was something that was taken on surveillance video. Officers were called to the scene because he'd fallen asleep in his car. He was sitting in his car blocking the drive-through. That's why they were called to the scene. But when you take a look at the police body camera video, Chuck, there were 2 things that stood out very strongly to me. One, the fact that you see on the video officers search Brooks and find no weapons on him, find that he's not armed. But the second, the fact, as you mentioned before, it was 43 minutes into that video, Chuck, before things escalated. For the better part of that video, you see Brooks sitting in his car, the officers talking to him, asking him things like, how much have you had to drink? What are you doing here tonight? Where were you going? Where were you coming from? He takes a field sobriety test, which investigators say that he failed. And then about 43 minutes into that video, you see the officers there try and place him under arrest. And that's when things quickly begin to escalate there. In about a 90-second piece, you see it go from a calm conversation to hearing those gunshots, Chuck, that ultimately ended his life. So as of right now, there are 3 different investigations taking place. The GBI, the Fulton County District Attorney to find out if there are any charges that would come from this case. And then finally, attorneys for Brooks' family say that they're also conducting their own investigation. Chuck.
Blaine, this was really swift action when you think about it in comparison to what we've seen in other incidents, other communities, how quickly not only the firing of the police officer, resignation of the police chief. What is the reaction of other Atlanta police officers? Are we hearing anything from the police side of things?
And that swift reaction was very intentional, Chuck. I've got to remind you, that we've been covering the protests here. It was less than 2 weeks ago that we saw 6 officers who are now facing charges in a different case surrounding those 2 college students, breaking in, using tasers on them, use of force. 2 of them were fired, and subsequently another 2 were fired. So this is kind of a pattern that we're seeing when it comes to trying to take very swift action in this. I will say that of just a couple of at least Atlanta police officers that I've spoken to, they're very surprised by how quickly this is transpiring, at least in the other case. That typically there's an investigation. It could take weeks, maybe months, before officers are fired and certainly before charges are brought. So certainly a very stunning speed with which this is happening. Chuck.
That's for sure. Blaine Alexander getting things started for us at this scene at the Wendy's in Atlanta. Blaine, thanks very much. Joining me now from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, is
I know
Tim
we're
Scott,
not crazy.
who is
we are not crazy.